Hi everybody, I'm Linda. Welcome back to No Deliveries Here. I'm sitting outside. I walked a little bit up, if you can see, that's a lot of trees that came down in the storms, but I am sitting, I walked up the slope a little bit and I'm sitting outside. It is a walloping 82 degrees on Sunday. I believe it's the 21st of March. It's about 2:15, and at 82 degrees for this time of the year, we are well above normal. But the weather's forecasting that we're going to drop into the upper 20s or low 30s by tomorrow morning. So back to normal. Raccoons and bananas. Godzilla and Yogi Bear. Very long black snakes and my living room. So we didn't grow up with all of that. We were raised in the cities between Manhattan and Brooklyn. Manhattan for my husband, Brooklyn and Queens for me, and then we both ended up in Miami. And I spent time in the military, but we were never outside of like going to Bear Mountain and Central Park and, you know, hanging out at the Hudson River, Coney Island, and all that sort of stuff. And I went camping with the Girl Scouts and things like that, but we, you know, we weren't used to being out like that, especially as far out as we are. So we got our wood cook stove, Morticia. We got Morticia in, and just getting her in the house was an experience in itself. So we got Morticia in, and you know, we had the roof on and we had everything, and we were working on doing the box on the roof that the wood stove pipe would go through. So we had to get everything set up to put that pipe through, get the insulation all around that, the insulated pipe, and then extend it past the roof, put the cap on, all of that good stuff. And this was, we've been here 26 years, so I want to say this was about 24 years ago. Our two youngest were here with us. So the stove was in, but it wasn't hooked up. We love bananas. Our kids love bananas. We always had bananas in the house. And you've already heard the story about one of our daughters hiding chocolate chips because she really liked chocolate chips. So I knew the kids would sneak down, and, you know, they would get a cookie, they would grab a chocolate chip, they would, you know, grab some dried fruit or whatever. And fresh fruit. We always had fresh fruit in the house. So we heard some strange noises one night, and we were like, what is that? And my husband's like, it's probably just one of the kids going to get something to eat. I was like, are you sure? Because we basically had a hole in the roof where the stovepipe would go. It was covered with a tarp on the outside, weighed down with some rocks and stuff, but it was just a big hole in the roof covered with a tarp. I was like, okay. So I came down the next morning, and I noticed the bananas were kind of torn apart and not looking great. So I told the kids, I don't mind you getting bananas if you get hungry in the middle of the night, but don't make a mess. And they look at each other, and exact words, I didn't do it, Mom. She must have done it. I didn't do it. She did it. I was like, okay, whatever. Just don't make a mess. Clean up your mess. I don't care if you eat or whatever. Just don't make a mess. And do you really have to like beat up the fruit when ripping off a banana? So about 2 or 3 days later, we hear some more noise. And my husband's like, the kids are getting bananas, or I think I had apples up there and bananas, and there might have been a bag of carrots. I can't remember. It's been a while. And I yell out, if you're going to take some fruit and you get hungry in the middle of the night, clean up your mess. And that was it. I didn't hear any response from the kids. Now, granted, we don't have a very big house, so it's really hard not to hear if somebody's, you know, talking loudly across the house to you. Didn't hear anything back. Got up the next morning, there was a mess everywhere. And I told the kids, I was like, you know, what's going on here? Now, we did have a cat, but it wasn't a cat stuff. And then I told the kids, I was like, hey, are your hamsters and gerbils and guinea pigs all accounted for? That's all I could think of. I can't remember Cubby was the hamster, Voldemort was the gerbil because he was black, and I can't remember what the guinea pig's name was. Nope, everybody was in their cages. What'd you guys do? Nothing. My husband's like, what's going on? I said, I don't know. As the kitchen's wreck again, we can't figure it out anything. Now, granted, the hole was still covered with a tarp. That night, we heard noise again, and I finally told my husband, I'm done with this shit. What the hell is going on? Grabbed a flashlight because we didn't have the electricity wired through the house yet. The solar, we still, we didn't have any lights anywhere because the kitchen wasn't even wired. There was like nothing. We used flashlights and we had oil lamps. And I grabbed the flashlight and I go down the ladder from my loft and I walk into the kitchen and there are raccoons on my stove. There was a raccoon dangling from the top where the hole was for the stovepipe, and there was another one on the chimney lower down the pipe because we did have half the pipe up, and the other guy was on the wood stove getting a bite of a banana and then passing it up and getting another bite and passing it up. I shined the light. They froze. They just stood there. I called my husband. He's like, what's going on? The kids are like, Mom, what's wrong? What's wrong? I was like, I found out what was going on with the bananas. And they all come down. It's like, what? Well, 2 of them had scampered back up, but the other one was still on the stove. I said, we have been robbed. We have been robbed by raccoons. Now I know why they call them bandits. It looks like they wear a little mask across their eyes. Those little suckers were coming down every once in a while and stealing the bananas. I can honestly say, until that time, I never had a raccoon in my house. Next, Godzilla and Yogi Bear. We had one of our granddaughters with us. She is now 16, so she was about 3, maybe just turned 3 or right before she turned 3. She was with us, and we had a little DVD player that we could watch movies on. We didn't have a TV. We were still, didn't have a lot of things set up, and, we did what we could. So we had the DVD player on, and we were watching Godzilla. So it got kind of loud, and my husband's like, does she have the remote? Is she turning it up? And I was like, well, I don't know. Let me check. Couldn't find the remote. Asked her, do you have any, she didn't have anything. I said, are we sitting on it or something? Is she sitting on it? We had a couch. Did it fall through nope. And every time it seemed that it got louder every time Godzilla was around. So we were like, well, maybe it's just loud because it's on the little DVD player and the sound's coming out louder. I mean, it's like, sitting on a little table right in front of us. The sounds got really loud. And my husband's like, that's not Godzilla. And I was like, that is definitely not Godzilla. Grab a flashlight, go outside the back door, look around. And our house is kind of U-shaped, and at the time there was a huge apple tree between the apple tree was right outside the back door. So think of a U, and there's a back door, and there's an apple tree, part of the house, other part of the house. My husband's like, holy shit. I was like, what's wrong? He's like, it's a bear. I said, well, where is the bear? He's like, on the roof. I was like, okay, well, what's he doing? He's taking the apples off the apple tree and sitting there and eating apples. And I was like, okay. So my husband grabbed a long pole and was poking at him. Bear didn't want to move. He was enjoying himself. We had a whole tree full of apples. He was just really happy just sitting there. He weighed about, from the sight of him, it's probably close to about 400 pounds. My husband's like, go get the rifle. I'm like, are you going to shoot him? He's like, no, I just want to fire a shot off to scare him, to get him down. I was like, okay. So I run in the house and I get the rifle and I bring it to my husband and he goes to fire and nothing happens. And he tried it again. Nothing happens. And he's like, did you load it? And I was like, no. He's like, so there's no bullets in it? I was like, no. He's like, why? And I said, well, when the grandkids are here, we keep the rifle in one spot and the ammo in the other spot because that's the safe thing to do. My husband's like, well, it's a good thing that Yogi Bear isn't coming after us because I'm standing here with a rifle with no weapons, no ammo except a pole, and he's just enjoying the apples. So we calmly went back inside, waited a little bit. We could hear the noise. And about 20 minutes had passed, and then we didn't hear any more noise. We very carefully come outside, and Yogi Bear's gone. And I guess he got his fill of our apples and went away. That was the very first time that Yogi Bear, we had seen him up close and very personal, that he appeared. And over the course of these many, many years here, Yogi, Cindy, Boo Boos, lots of bears have made their appearance, and it's been quite an adventure. Now, when we did live up north, we did have bears where we lived, but they never we had wolves and we had bears when we lived in this one state up north, and but they kind of stayed in the field. In fact, the wolves never went after. We had goats and Jersey cows and that kind of stuff, and they never went after anything, and neither did the bear. The bear we had a creek with a smallish pond, and the beavers used to love to make a dam, and bear basically stayed out there. But we've never had them this up close and personal. So that was Godzilla and Yogi Bear. Black snakes. I do not like snakes. I do not like lizards. I do not like worms. I'm sorry. I just don't. Especially the snakes. I do not like snakes. And when we lived down in Miami, we had iguanas everywhere. We could hear the alligators croaking in the canals where we lived. We had snapping turtles, and we had water moccasins. But everything pretty much stayed in the canal. The water moccasins, the snapping turtles, and the alligators. Now, I have brothers, and they did have pet snakes, boa constrictors, and things like that. But I never ever liked snakes, and we never really saw any, except a garter snake if you were lucky in Central Park. Maybe if you went up to Bear Mountain or something. But even when I was stationed in Texas and Georgia, never really saw any snakes. So we knew there were snakes here. There's copperheads and rattlesnakes. We've been blessed. We haven't seen any of those. There are garter snakes. There are what they call a water snake, but it's not it's not a poisonous one. There's king snakes, and we found out real quick that there's black snakes here, and we found out real quick how big those snakes get. I am 5 feet nothing. And my husband's like, well, they eat the mice and they eat the rodents and yada, yada, yada. And, they keep that stuff down. It keeps the stuff from getting in the garden or the mice coming in the house. Because, honest to goodness, no matter how you live in the country, you're always going to have a mouse problem. So I was like, okay, well, I don't like them. We were sitting on the couch, and my husband I think he was writing something. And I was just sitting on the couch with a book, and out of my peripheral vision, I was like, I think something just crawled across the floor or moved. And I was like, it must have been a shadow. Maybe the leaves were on the trees at the time, and it was breezy, and I thought it was a shadow. Looked down my book, reading again, and I saw something, and I look, and I scream like a banshee. My husband, I thought he was going to have a heart attack, and this was just a few years ago. And he's like, what the hell is wrong? What's wrong? I am climbing the back of the couch. If I could have crawled up the wall and went on the floor of the loft and climbed up into my loft bedroom, I would have. I am screaming and screaming. He hadn't noticed yet. He's like, what's wrong? I was like, there's a snake. And he's like, okay, where? I said, it's right there on the floor. Don't you see it? He's like, where? I said, right there. It just went around my laundry basket where the laundry is. But you can see the tail coming over from one of the, it's like a vent window we have in our living room. And it had a little hole in the screen because we used to have to run a hose and a wire through that until we got everything wired and hooked up properly. It was a little hole. It was not much. And he's like, where is it? And I said, it's right there. And it looks really, really, really big. As I'm continuing, I am now on the back of the couch. You know, you've got your cushion, you got your back, and you got that little hump that rests against the wall. I was up on that. That snake made its way through that little tiny hole, and my husband did go to get it, and he's looking at it as he's trying to collect it into a bucket, shooing it in the bucket. You know, not a problem. He doesn't particularly like snakes, but, you know, he doesn't do the whole banshee thing. So as the snake was going into the bucket, my husband's pretty much, I could tell he's counting or measuring, and he's like, hey, guess what, baby? And I was like, what? And he goes, that snake is almost 6 feet tall, 6 feet long. That is way taller than you are. And I was like, yeah, okay, go let it out. Let's just go get it outside. And he's looking at it again. He's like, yeah, it's about 6 feet long. And I was like, just get it out. So we have had raccoons steal our bananas. We've had the bear eat the apples. And we had a 6 foot long black snake come in and scare the bejesus out of me. And I'm sure people heard me. People heard me probably 20 miles away. So welcome to life in the country, where your nearest neighbor is at least 6 miles away. The nearest road is the nearest one-lane road is 3 miles away. But the raccoons, the bears, the snakes, the possums, the skunks, which thank goodness we don't have too many of those, the bobcats, the wild turkey, the flying squirrels, the chipmunks, and everything in between is not just right outside your door, but in your living room, in your kitchen. There's a fly flying around right outside, not right outside your front door, but in your kitchen, on your roof, and in your living room. I hope you enjoyed this little story. Lots more to come. Thanks very much, guys. You have a great day. Bye-bye.